Zapier is by far the most powerful automation tool I have ever used. In this video, I'm gonna walk you through how I use Zapier to automate my post-sales process. The first one here is going to be our sales team gets on a call with someone and then they're triggered to do a post-sales form. We use Zapier to automatically remind them to do the post-sales form, and we use a pre-filled that link through Zapier to basically fill out as much of it as possible, including creating the proposal for them. So all I have to do is make the custom changes and then send it. So they're going to get a pre-filled out link in their email from Zapier, and they'll just complete this process, who their prospect was, their name, their phone number, their email, how they found us, what stage they are in the call, if they're hot, warm, if we're gonna downsell them, if we're gonna cancel the call, if they were unqualified, when a proposal was done. This is a very specific piece of it that triggers our proposal follow-up series. So not only does it remind them to do things, but it also automatically reaches out to the prospect based on actions from our proposal software. We use GoProspero for that. Salesperson's notes, video recording, so these are really critical. We make sure that all of our calls are recorded for quality and insurance, but what this really allows us to do is once we do make that sale, we're able to hand that off to our operations team and they're able to have success with it. We automatically donate to, occasionally when the call requires, the date the call was taken, where they found us. So that's the form. Now, this form itself is great, but what happens with it? Each one of these stages is actually part of a bigger automation. You'll see this, that'll trigger a whole bunch of things. So instead of our team having to go into our CRM and go do a donation and make sure the opportunity is set up right and make sure every little piece of this is set up right, put them in the follow-up campaign, it's all done with automation in Zapier. All they need to do is complete that form that was already emailed to them. So before we walk through how this process is actually built, and I'll show you a big piece of our actual automation, let's jump into deals. So part of this automation is creating a deal here. You'll see our pipelines right here. We do cold, warm, hot, and closing soon. And we have internal meetings behind this, but obviously basically closing soon is they're interested, we're just waiting for payment, whatever that is. And this allows a larger team to be able to filter by their leads, make sure they're following up with them consistently. Management can look at the pipeline and figure out how we can flush out, more sales and more growth as needed. Now, the other piece of that is it'll also trigger a follow-up series that you'll see here. And this follow-up series is slightly complicated, but doesn't need to be that complicated. Basically, it's just looking to see if they open their proposal and thank them for getting on a call. So we do an automatic SMS from that individual sales number because we use automation there. I did another video on that if you're interested in how to do that. But it says, thank you so much for being on the call. I just sent you an email. Would really let me know if just please confirm if you got that email. And what that does is it helps make sure that obviously that email didn't go to spam, but also it's that personal touch where they have their phone number, they can text them, they can call them, and it's that kind of personal touches that make a huge difference. And so all of these are very intentional and spaced out properly to exactly when I, as a salesperson, would have reached out normally. So I would have just originally sent myself reminders to check, and all of these have goals. So basically what goals are is they're looking to see if an action's already been taken so that they don't accidentally, someone already purchased and they're getting hit, or someone canceled, their lead was considered lost. All that takes it out so they're not in these automations anymore. So let's jump into the Zap because that's the focus of this. Basically what they're gonna do is they're gonna fill out the Google form here. That automatically is linked to a Google spreadsheet. So that you can do in Google Forms. You don't have to do a Zap for that. And basically our trigger is based on this Google spreadsheet. So for you that are new to Zapier, a trigger is basically what action is gonna start this off. So a new spreadsheet row is basically when everything's gonna start happening. So someone completes that form, it creates a new spreadsheet row, and then it'll start triggering. So all of the information is pulled in from that spreadsheet. The first thing we're gonna do is look up the salesperson involved. So basically when they fill out that form, it'll say who that salesperson is, but all we have from that is their email address. So it's gonna pull in their email address. You can do this with codes, you can do this a different way, but then we're gonna do a Google spreadsheet lookup. So basically right here, you're creating a new event. So you're doing Google Sheets, you're gonna do spreadsheet lookup. And for us, we're looking up, so you can see what it looks like here. We're looking up the value of their email. salesperson's email is what's looking up on the spreadsheet. So here's an example of that spreadsheet, salesperson email, and then what you have here is you have their LinkedIn, their calendar to rebook, links to their proposal software, their first, their last name. And so we're actually able to assign all of that to that lead once this post-sales form is done. So that way we can trigger a whole bunch of custom automations that are hyper personalized. So what that's doing again is it's looking up that salesperson, and then it'll pull all of their information in that row. So anything they did. And then all we're doing here is updating that contact. So you'll come in here, we're putting anything from that spreadsheet, we're making that their phone number, full name is updated, any tags that we need. So the tags in ActiveCampaign are what are gonna trigger those different events for us. So those tags are gonna trigger that post-sales follow-up if needed. So you'll see one of these is gonna be post-call form completed, salesperson, proposal sent. So that proposal sent is what triggers us to do those follow-ups, and it's gonna assign, myself as the salesperson, email and sales ID. So I did a different video on that, and that's how we send those personalized SMS. That way they can text back and email, and it's going to the salesperson using sales message, which is another amazing tool that integrates really well with ActiveCampaign. I've been very happy with it for the most part. Some bugs, but more or less great. So now we're gonna have this create a new spreadsheet row. This is more of our lead tracking. So if they cancel or do something like that, this is more kind of how we're looking at pre-qualified, and it's a little bit outside the scope of this one, but it's how we're analyzing whether things, if they canceled, whether the lead was qualified, whether it was a good call, and just in one master spreadsheet so we can pull pivot tables. All right, so these steps are finding the contact ID in ActiveCampaign, because what it's gonna do is it's gonna give us their code ID so we can do different automations later. So all they are is lookups by email address to make sure that in the automation later on, we can actually see who that is and trigger automations, which we'll need when we go into the hardest part of this, which is actually adding those leads to the pipeline. And that's one of the most critical things, because that's how we're tracking it as a company and looking at our value of our pipe. So you'll come in here, and basically the last step here is what I really like to do is this is best practice in my opinion. I always put a note in the contact in ActiveCampaign, and then I put what was changed and what the trigger was. Especially as you're building and growing very quickly, you'll find that different automations might actually trigger mistakes, and you'll end up with bad data. And so once you find that, if you did make that mistake, you can easily track back and say, okay, this automation triggered this, here's the whole URL to it, let me just go back and find the error. So kind of debugging issues very quickly using this strategy. So this step for us, some of our team was making too long a deal notes. And so this just made sure that if it was too long, it got cut off. It would still be stored in the spreadsheet so we could find it. And ideally they're submitting that video that's required. So that way we don't need to really look at the notes as much as watch the video. Now Pass is a newer tool in Zapier, but it is so critical, and it's how we're able to do this. Basically what it's gonna look for is in that questionnaire, it asks what stage they were in their buying journey. So if they were a hot lead, if they were warm, if they were cold, and that is how we're triggering this. You'll see cold, warm, no show, and hot. All of these have different actions in our CRM, and so we have to filter by that. So it's basically gonna come in here, and I'm gonna name it so that way I can understand what it is, and then the rule, follow-up score contains cold. So basically it's just looking at this score, this is called the follow-up score, and then it's saying text contains cold. That's literally the entire thing. And then from there, it will filter through. So only the ones that are cold will go in here. And then it's the same thing here. All right, so only the ones that are warm will go through here. And then same thing, you basically no show, and it's just going exactly based off of these keywords. Now, contains, it needs to be exact for a specific word. So we didn't do, the whole thing doesn't have to be exact, we just took cold, warm, because that's how we have it set up. You can change that through the rules here, and you can change contains, and you have different options here. The last step of this is actually putting it into that CRM. And so that's how why we had to actually look stuff up beforehand, is because we needed to have their account information. So let's look at the step here. It's create a new deal. So again, we're putting this into our pipeline. And then the actions here, we're connecting the account, we're adding a value, the owner ID. So that's what we had to look up here. That's the actual salesperson. And then we'll put in all of the information, and the contact ID is what we looked up here, which is just what that actual contact's account number is. And then you'll put any descriptions you need to do and continue, and then that'll go into your pipeline. So again, the pipelines is what our sales team use. There's a bunch of tools in there, And then this, by doing that post sales form tag right here, will automate that and put them into our post follow-up funnel. If you guys like content like this and are struggling with Zapier, please make sure to leave a comment. Let me know what Zap you need to see next, and I'll make a custom one just for you. Please make sure to subscribe. Thank you guys.